Well, greetings to everyone at Hope is Alive. My name is Adam Bregou. I have the privilege of serving as an elder and pastor at Missio Church in downtown Syracuse, as well as the director of a nonprofit ministry called Serve Syracuse. And that's what I've been asked to share a little bit about with you today, the ministry of Serve Syracuse. We established this nonprofit in 2016 with the mission to mobilize people and resources to serve the most vulnerable in our city. And for us, that really comes from our overall goal to participate in the redemption of Syracuse, which stems from our understanding of God's plan and his purpose for his people and for his world, that from the very beginning, we see a God who created people to represent him and to fill the earth with his glory. And throughout the scriptures, we see that God cares deeply for those who are oppressed and vulnerable. Now, spiritually speaking, that's all of us. And so Jesus humbles himself, he becomes a servant, and he goes to the cross to rescue those who are spiritually poor, meaning they recognize they have nothing to offer God on their own, and that in Christ they find their greatest treasure, right? A restored relationship with God, their Creator. But God also demonstrates a special concern for those who are physically and economically and socially poor and vulnerable. In fact, he commands his people over and over again to care for them. And he judges them. He's pretty hard on his people when they neglect that, when they neglect to care for those who are hurting, when they neglect his justice. And then if you follow Jesus around in the Gospels, you find that he spends a lot of time with those who are rejected and unclean. And so as his people, as his followers, we're motivated to help others just as he did, especially those who can't provide anything in return. Not to ease our guilt by any means, but really by the grace of God. Our desire to serve the vulnerable in our city, we hope, is one, an example of God's grace, that he who was rich became poor. But two, and I think most importantly, it's really the result of God's grace, transforming our own lives, to take us from those who think only of ourselves to those who have a desire and a longing to serve him and serve others. So we've been working in the city for a number of years with these things in focus, trying to care for those in need, while believing that the greatest need that every person has really is to be reconciled with God the Father through God the Son, and that a lasting peace and hope really is only found in him. And so from our local church, we had established a number of partnerships with other inner city ministries and churches, and we were sending volunteers and support to them. But we began to ask the question, well, what if we were to take our name off of it? So it wasn't just about one church, and we were to create a separate entity. Could we send more people and connect more resources to these other ministry partners who are serving on the front lines? Could we increase the church's presence, therefore the gospel's presence, on the margins of our city and help God's people do what he intended for them to do, to fill every corner of our city with his presence? And so that's what we set out to do. We took our existing relationships and partnerships and brought some structure to it. We started with 10 what we call affiliates, partners who really have two things in common. One, they're all committed to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And two, in some way, they're serving a vulnerable pocket of our city. It could be inner city children, it could be the schools, it could be refugees, it could be those struggling with addiction or facing unstable housing situations. But we began with those partners and sought to help encourage and give hope to them so that they can in turn give hope to others. And so there's really two things that Serve Syracuse does with these ministry partners. One, we seek to serve as a conduit of people and resources to bring to them as they're working on the front lines, right, extra hands and feet, because we know they're passionate about the cause that God's put on their heart. But sometimes what means most to them is having someone by their side to help take up the cause with them. And so even if it's just one or two more volunteers, it brings so much hope and encouragement to those who are serving, pouring themselves out, to know that other people see them and want to help them and take up that cause. So we serve as a conduit to get people and resources to the front lines. And second, we serve as a network for these existing ministries. You know, as we started out, we discovered that many of them have overlapping ministries in some way, and we've brought them together in ways that allow them to collaborate and cooperate much more than when they were apart. and sometimes they hadn't even met each other. And so we try to network, bring them together, and hopefully bring hope by reminding them that they're not alone, that they're part of a bigger picture, part of God's bigger plan, and they have one part to play in that. So that's a quick snapshot of what we do. And one of the verses all along that really has been a theme for us is 1 Corinthians 4, verse 1, where the Apostle Paul writes, "This is how one should regard us." In other words, this is the reputation we hope for as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. That's how he wanted to be known. That's how we want to be known. Simply as servants of Christ and good stewards, right? That we are taking responsibility for the message of the gospel that God has entrusted to us so that he would be honored and glorified. So that's a quick picture of who we are. You can learn more about us on our website, servesyracuse.org. But blessings to you.